So we have, to my immediate right, Sam Austin, who is head of audio at Goodstuff Communications, part of now the Stagwell Group, and Gemma Lee, who's partner AV delivery at Dentsu. Sam, head of audio. What do you do for the uninitiated? What do you do as part of your job?
Well, it was kind of raised earlier in that, traditionally agencies were set up and that you had maybe your AV teams or your, radio, TV and that, and then digital audio would sit under here. Well, Goodstuff have kind of pulled that together and created an audio team. So we look after all aspects to do with audio. So I head up the team. We've got a lovely team there's 5 of us, so quite big for an agency, but, we try to push boundaries, try to be creative and innovative. Our On the Beach activity has been spoken about today already, so hopefully we are delivering in that sense.
Gemma, so partner AV delivery,
Yeah.
how is that? That sounds very different to what Sam's doing. Why are you different?
So my role and my team is we focus purely on kind of making sure the campaigns deliver for clients. So my team look after all TV delivery, all audio delivery, including digital audio in that as well. Cinema, just making sure everything's kind of delivered and where it needs to be.
So that's quite interesting in itself. So at the start of this session, I interviewed Lee Brown from Spotify, and towards the end, I asked him if agencies perhaps need to restructure in the way that they trade audio. So that might be part of what bleeds into our discussion now as well in terms of the measurement, but also the trading piece as well. But before we get into that, I love asking people to give marks out of 10. Please give us a mark out of 10 for how you feel how well we're doing on measurement, and give an indication of where we need to get to. Sam?
So I think if we was to break it all down into its individual constituents, so radio, probably an 8 or a 9, podcast, probably maybe a 7 or 8, and then digital audio in terms of your DAX, your Octave, and Spotify music streaming, probably maybe a 7 or 8.
Yeah.
But when we put it all together, maybe a 5, because there isn't that holistic view, there isn't that holistic current measurement tool that enables us to be able to, fundamentally say you need to add everything together to create this. We can do it for one, we could do it maybe for a couple of them. So, systems out there such as Touchpoints enables us to, at the beginning in the planning stage, be able to, put on there crudely what your radio plan will deliver, then you can add on podcasts or you can add on digital audio. But it's not the actual delivery, it's the upfront stuff. So we do
the same with Audio Stack. We would look at it and say what percentage needs to go into digital audio.
What's Audio Stack?
It's just a planning tool where you would put all your budgets in, and it'll give you basically what needs to go in linear, what needs to go in DAX, what needs to go in Octave or Spotify to give you the best reach curve possible. And so we would use that, but again, it's not giving you kind of a measurement tool. But I think, we talk about measurement in audio, and I think it's difficult because of the way that audio is consumed. So because, for me personally, if I'm watching telly, I don't want to be one of those people, but I am, be on my phone. So I would do something quicker because I've got something. Whereas for audio, I'm listening to it while I'm doing other stuff. And I know it was touched upon earlier where, they were saying, radio's your friend, and it's been that way for years. And it's always been the same story about radio and audio, that you do it while you're doing other stuff. So I think, when we talk about plugging it into other options, other like when you can measure TV and stuff and see an immediate uplift, it's difficult because with radio and audio, it's probably not an immediate effect that it's having, because we all know you have to build a frequency with radio. So it's how do we kind of get that from the audio activity that's happening.
And I think what, the developments and sort of the tools and systems that when DAX entered the market originally, the listener insight ID with the audio pixel matching, you hear an ad and you can see a lag of X amount of days until you took that action, or potentially you visited the site a few times, but it weren't until you'd heard the ad 8 times until you had actually made an action on the website. That's really helped us to be able to say, you need that longevity, you need that time. I mean, who was it earlier? One of the clients was saying they've been advertising for years on the channel, and I think what we're at the moment, we're in a time where clients you kind of got a bit of both. You've got ones that want everything now. They want to see a response now. They're like, right, I want to advertise on radio. How can I see that spot is going to drive this? And then it leads into, you know, with other channels, so TV, and especially like DR TV, where there is that immediate action. They can plug all that data into TV Squared, things like that, and immediately associate that spot has generated that many people going to a website. So we had this, you know, years ago with Eve, and they literally did one spot on TV. It was their first TV spot, and you literally had the client video themselves going, wow, look at my website, look how many people like crashed their site, and they, you know.
Yeah, we've had that with clients where you can see, we have TVRO, where you can plug that data in and it's immediate. So the next day you can go to the client and say, it's performed really well, buying into that bake-off spot was the right thing to do. But then when it comes to audio, everyone's just sat there going, well, audio works. And clients are going, well, how do you know? And you're like, but it just does. But again, it's like sat there saying that to clients. It's how do we quantify it? And also bearing in mind that, you know, the digital audio landscape has improved massively and it's amazing. But the majority of listening is still done through linear. So if the majority of budget is in linear, how do we prove that effectiveness immediately? That's what the industry has to kind of are up against.
So Gemma, wave a magic wand then. You could do whatever you like. How are we going to do it? What do we need to do?
Well, that's a trick question. I think, in my opinion, I think that the media owners need to come together better in order to look at how we can do measurement. And, you know, the Radio Centre do an amazing job with, you know, with the research they do. It's brilliant. But I think it's, you know, clients want to see more. They want to be able to say what worked and stuff. And, you know, if you do partnerships and you get a post-campaign analysis and you get, oh, you had this many clicks, you had this, there's nothing that says, oh, but, you know, if we take On the Beach, is there anything that's going to say X amount went onto On the Beach, X amount looked at a holiday, and X amount actually booked it? And that's kind of the difference, I think, whereas with TV, you can track it a bit easier, and with digital, you can track it easier. But, you know, like, if you think about the immediate response with audio, if you're listening to a radio station, it's to win tickets to your favourite gig or to win a cash prize. There's something in it for that listener. So I think it's up to the radio groups to really think about how do we come together to solve this problem. You know, many, many years ago, they came together to go, right, and agencies like, how do we solve the trading issue and, you know, jet and stuff like that. So it's how do they now do it to provide measurement, bearing in mind it's not going to be immediate with audio because it's never been immediate.
But I think on that, it's not just up to the media owners, it's up to the agencies as well. The agencies all need to come together and almost push
definitely.
Jet to, I mean, Jet's got it all there, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
You know, we had a conversation with the guys last week and looking at, they were sort of saying, oh, what would you guys like? And I was like, right, like this, I'd like that.
Yeah.
Weekly reporting, I want, you know, daily reporting. At the moment, we're having to wait for, you know, radio campaigns to finish and wait a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks until we can get those reconciled numbers. And then we plug those into some systems and see how, you know, it's not fit for purpose. And by that time, you might have missed out on so. But then equally, it's like, how can you utilise client data to work alongside whatever's being produced in Jet and marry those two? Because obviously, you know, with things like TV Squared and you know, those things, you can see that immediate effects, those immediate lifts and stuff, and the sales. But with radio at the moment, with radio in particular, it's kind of a little bit disjointed. We know it works. We're all here. I'm preaching to the converted. Like, everyone in this room is here for a reason. We get radio fundamentally does a good job. It does branding. It does awareness. It does everything you know, we want it to do. And clients on the whole do get that. But I think where they're being pressured, especially at the moment, you know, cost of living crisis, they need to prove everything works. The easy option, go with TV because you can prove it works. Our job you know, quite rightly so, is right, prove it's going to
Yeah.
work for me. And you can come up with all these case studies. I mean, they are brilliant. We do use them. You know, we had a pitch last week, and it's like throwing the stats at them. And I'm sure everyone throws the stats at them. But it's amazing how clients kind of go, oh, right, I didn't realise that. It's kind of on the website. So it's been there for 4 years. But it's still, we need something new.
Yeah.
And it's like a call to arms. What can we do next? How
And
can
I think
we do that?
with that something new, the question needs to be asked again. It was talked about earlier about what are you tracking? Is it a brand awareness? Is it a direct response? And also making sure that you've got good creative, because let's be honest, there's nothing worse than a crap radio ad.
Yeah.
Nothing worse.
Be the best radio buyer
yeah,
in the world.
you can do the best plan.
Maybe a crap podcast ad.
Yeah, but you can do you can do the best, you know, the best plan, the best buy-in, the best positions and all that. And then if it's a really poor creative, it's not going to engage with people and people are going to turn off.
Yeah, and I think broadly the theme has to be don't compete on the tools and the verticals, but actually competing on the creative is what advertisers should be doing, as well as clever buying strategies. I do want to open up this session to questions because I know that measurement's really important to everyone in the room. So if you do have questions, I'm going to start looking around, and please just wave your arms and we'll make sure you have the chance to do that to our agency folk here. So how well can audio be used for the things you're trying to do? I mean, Sam, you mentioned how budgets are being squeezed and you're under pressure to prove things. So for things like media mix modelling, econometrics, where are you at with using audio right now?
So we're trialling a new system that we've built internal, like bespoke for Goodstuff at the moment, and it's really difficult. Like some models out there, you look at it and you go, that's great because it means we get more budget. You know, brilliant. We'll use that. But some of them are just bonkers. You know, I remember looking at this econometrics model that was saying I needed to spend £500 in one region for it to be the most effective ROI, and I was thinking, God, that's like, you know, not many spots. That's going to do like naff all. So there's a mix of.
Which region was that? Which is that?
Oh, Joe, I can't remember. It's when I used to work on Benson's for beds. And they were like, you need to spend, you need to spend that amount of money just to drive. And I was like, no, you can't do anything there for that.
I think with econometrics as well, it depends on kind of who you're using, because we've had it where it's very similar, you know, kind of objectives, similar kind of messaging, and one econometric model's been like, oh my God, this has been amazing, radio's brilliant, like woo, and then the next one they're like, oh, it's terrible, we can't use it, and you're like, what?
But it worked perfectly the last time,
and you're literally like,
one.
okay, so again, it's kind of depends on what econometric model's kind of being used.
So we retrofit with some of the, with TV Squared, we're trying to plug radio data in.
How do you do that? Because obviously that's...
It's a little bit fluffy, let's be honest. We're trying to use that for a couple of our clients who are DR focused, and they're not bothered about the brand and stuff. It's literally response. Obviously the model's telling us, right, you've got to go evenings, you've got to go overnights, because that's where it's more cost efficient, and yes, you've got to be on the right networks, but you don't necessarily have to be in the peak times. And I just massively dislike the system's telling us this. My logic and experience is saying that's absolute rubbish.
But again, I think because like TV Squared and TVRO are built for a medium that is more in the moment rather than a medium that is, it has a more longevity for listeners. So again, we've done it where you try to put it in to just get something rather than you just stood there going, oh, it's really worked.
But with that, you don't get any insight for digital audio. You don't get any insight for podcasts, when and where you should be using those. So if you're going down, if you've got a client who's solely, reliant on these modelling platforms, they don't necessarily always include areas that we know we should be in anyway. You should be on these other platforms. Obviously brief and client dependent and what the objectives of the campaign is, but you need to be in digital audio, you need to be in podcast. Everywhere has its own right of place.
Yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned something very interesting before about how we were talking earlier in the day about how possibly the media owners could be coming together to develop joint industry currency or whatever that might be. But you mentioned something interesting about maybe the agency should actually be coming together to make more demands or suggestions about trading. I mean, how would that work in practice? Does that happen at all, at least informally?
Informally, it always
informally, yeah. Informally, we all speak to each other because, we're all quite passionate about audio. I came here today and I'd said to Sam, I'd heard her on the beach advert this morning on Radio X. It's like, it sounded brilliant, really liked it. It really resonated with me, and I would be someone who they would be targeting. And I thought, oh, great. And I said to Sam, but I think sometimes there's a bit of a misconception that agencies are at kind of loggerheads against each other. But we all just want to kind of deliver for clients. We're all after the same thing. And yeah, you pitch for clients and, that's the way it is. But I think coming together and working together more and pushing for something like this is a real positive. And it helps push audio budgets across the board. From my point of view, my audio budgets come from an AV budget, and a digital budget sits quite separately. And if the digital team are buying kind of audio platforms, they're looking at the display rather than kind of the audio side of it. So for me, it's about agencies and media owners coming together to come up with a universal solution.
At the end of the day, audio represents, 20% of someone's day in terms of hours?
Yep.
And in terms of media budget going that way, what's it, about 4 or 5% in total? I mean, obviously waiting for the IAB's numbers for reconciled for last year, but the reality is we know there needs to be more budget there. How do we justify? And I think, it's a victim of itself. I know Howard mentioned it, but radio success over the years, it has been a cost-efficient medium. And I know the media owners now, and agencies will kill me and clients will kill me, but yeah, they're rightly so putting their prices up because it needs to happen because it has been such a cheap,
and I agree completely.
Channel.
Yeah,
and people, it is misrepresentative in terms of the budgets that people are putting there versus other channels that may not necessarily, represent as much of people's days as they do.
And also, I think if you think about the likes of, Global and Bauer with price increases, they've not increased their prices for so long, and yet we demand innovation from them daily. But it's like, that's got to come from somewhere. And in comparison to, a TV cost per thousand, they're still really, really highly competitive. So I think with that in mind, for me and clients and, other people would be the same, we're of the same milk, it had to happen in order to drive more innovation and in order for us to say, okay, now you need to help us prove it's worked. Because we can't just keep standing there going, it really does work.
Yeah.
Which is what we do, because it does.
So what would you say are the biggest pain points that are holding you back in terms of where are the biggest blind spots in your measurement, would you say?
It is that holistic view.
Yeah.
It is that holistic delivery.
Yeah.
And there is an education job still, I keep saying it, there is an education job to be done. Like, we'll pull plans together and we'll have sort of our standard radio, our digital audio and our podcasts. At the moment, they're in 3 different segments on our plans. And when budgets start to get squeezed, the first things to come off, they take the bottom things off, then the next one, because they think, right, radio gives the broadcast element. Yes, it does. The other areas do give something different too. They do give that more, podcast. It's all about that intimate environment. It's all about that one-to-one. It's a completely different way of delivering a message. Digital audio, there's so much we can do there. I worry that it's going to go too digital focus and fall down the trap, everything's about that impression tracking, that person conversion. You don't want to go too granular.
Why not?
Because I think you'll be in danger of every spot being absolutely scrutinised, and then you lose, the role of radio is to be sort of almost everywhere, all right, rightly so, with the right frequency. You don't want to hear the same thing too many times because that's really boring. But
if you're building a frequency, and that's the role of audio and radio, to kind of, more radio rather than a digital audio ad. Because like they said earlier on, you know, if you hear something and you hear, I'm listening to podcasts and I'm hearing, I think it's Hello Fresh every, like literally like, why am I even bothered that this person wants to do this? Whereas with linear audio, you're using it to build that frequency, to get a percentage cut through, to make sure that somebody's going to think, oh, I'll take action. So I think the more you scrutinise it, the more it becomes a bit more harder to kind of prove its effectiveness because of the nature of the media. I think from a point of view, it's more for me, like Sam said, about that holistic view. You know, very rarely when you're speaking with media owners do you get something back that's a linear and a digital audio, and combined, this is what they're going to deliver. You deal with probably separate teams. I think Global have just started to bring everything together under one.
They're seen the same within sort of things like partnerships, airtime, digital audio. You know, we push back and go, well, what's that going to reach?
Yeah.
What's the reach and frequency of that? All of it together. Oh, well, this bit's going to deliver this bit's going to deliver, and you're like, no.
I want it all.
We need it all together.
You know, all of it, because otherwise, you can't go to, well, this bit's going to deliver this, and the client's going to ask us the same questions. They're going to say, well, overall, who am I going to reach? And again, you're just stood there going, oh, a lot of people. Like,
I know over the years I've been a pain and I've pushed back on, especially if it's a long-term partnership.
Yeah.
I'm like, I need to see this in my planning system. Not to trade like that, just need to see it so I can cut and paste.
Oh yeah, I'm always like, send it over in jet. Like, you can't do partnership. You're like, it's still airtime. You can just send it over. It's fine. It's still an airtime spot. And then just so you can see everything alongside any airtime you're going to run, and then alongside any kind of DAX or Octave or anything like that, or Spotify.
That's another area we're pushing. We've kind of gone to our radio planning system team and sort of said to them, we want to be able to see digital audio in there too. And they're like, oh, what, to trade? Not to trade, just to see the delivery figures. I mean, yes, we can manually put it all back into touch points and get it holistically there, but it's not fit for purpose. It's clunky, it takes time, and you just need it to be as easy and quick as possible, because time is of the essence, isn't it? You need to, like, planners have been waiting, they want it now, clients want it yesterday.
Everyone's under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
We have a couple of minutes left. Does anyone have a question? We have a question here. If anyone has a question, please raise their hands. We only have a couple of minutes left.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Maria Cadbury from Say It Now. So measurements, like everything to us, which, as you know, and we built the voice app for Magic on the Beach, just a little, plug there. No, but the big thing for us, when we look at smart speaker activity, so you run your audio ad, you then interact with your smart speaker, and we give this really, really rich data. So what we're talking to clients about is when you have that insight, and every campaign we run, we'll see time of day or the different days of the week does perform different for the action we're taking. Do you then look at that data and apply it to the rest of the campaign and take it to linear and go, we actually know now that we planned it this way. Some assumptions are right and some aren't. So there's a huge opportunity in that sense to use it. And just before I answer, I do totally agree, let's not get caught up in the impression. We're talking about deep in the branding engagement. Let's not go attribution.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So how transferable would you say it is?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I ran a campaign once for a charity, and I expected them to be all classic FM listeners and love that sort of music. And it actually came out they were into, like, one of the attributes, it was a DAX campaign, and they said they loved like country and like rock music. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll put Radio X on next time. So it gave me a completely different point of view. And that sort of insight, 100%, is brilliant, especially if you're then thinking about long-term like partnership activity. If it comes out that you know that mid-morning is the most efficient, and you've got a client that says, no, I just want breakfast and drive because that's the only time people listen, which we all know is not the case. But if they've got it ingrained in them and they're old, not old school, not old, that's how they think. If we can then turn around and go, well, Insight is saying actually 10 till 1 is more efficient. These are the properties here. So yes, it does play into that. We've just got to make sure that the client's brave enough to do it in the first place and keep doing it, and not just sort of do it once and go, oh, that was a one-off result. We want them to keep spending.
And I think kind of insight like that really helps, because I think, and I said it last year at this event, that from a listener point of view, whether you're listening, you know, I will listen via my Alexa, and I now have a Sonos in the kitchen because I'm posh. So I listen via that, but to me, I'm still listening to my favourite radio show.
Yep.
I can just, it's more accessible to interact with because I don't necessarily have to pick up my phone and text in. And I'm an absolute sucker for radio. I know how it works, but I really believe it's all 100% live, and I'm bought into the magic of it. So I would interact via my speaker, but that's just because I'm listening via a speaker. So even if I was listening via a DAB set, I'm still of the same mindset of that person. So it would absolutely feed through to how you're looking at the rest of your campaign.
Okay. Very quick question, Howard.
Hello, panel.
Hello.
Just a quick question. You spoke about media owners making the investment in the measurement system. Obviously, agencies don't pay for Radar, which is obviously a measurement trading currency, as well as gives detailed audience information. But do you think the media owners would actually get their money back and more if they gave you the system that you wanted, which I know is hard to define apart from this is what we like, whether it's feasible or not? Do you think, A, they would get their money back? So let's say it's a, I don't know, £2-3 million investment for the audio industry to do that. That would return on their investment through higher increased budgets. And do you think agencies, you were talking about rates going up in the audio sector, do you think agencies would be prepared to pay a surcharge to access a new system?
That's a good question to round us off with. So you pay for it, yes or no?
I suppose it depends on what, I think, you know, to answer the question, yes, I think media owners would get that investment back 100% because you're protecting audio budgets and you've got then the potential to increase those budgets and fight against, for me, probably more of the digital spend. Would we pay a surcharge? It depends on what that looks like.
In principle.
I don't know. That's my commercial head. I'm such a trader. I'm like, oh, what does this deal look like?
Very briefly before we wrap up, Sam, would you?
I think we should. I think we should pay because I think the media owners will benefit because you'll be boosting your percentage share of the marketing spend. There's big pressure, especially to people like Bauer and Global, where, you know, radio in terms of minutage, supply and demand, the needs to move people to digital audio commercially, you know, is a big thing at the moment. So this would help them, especially. Yeah. And then for others, especially, you know, podcasts and digital audio platforms, I think that would massively help them to increase their spend. So from them, yes, I think they should. And I think we should because we want what's best for our clients. So if it was a small percentage of the overall budget, I don't see a problem.
Yeah.
Lots to consider over lunchtime in your conversations. Thank you so much to our panel. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for listening.